discussions about the obligation of children and women and fulfilling the obligation for someone else, even a man fulfilling the obligation for a woman, for example, Kiddush, if a man could fulfill the obligation, if he has already fulfilled the biblical obligation, but hadn't fulfilled his, hadn't fulfilled his, but the woman hadn't fulfilled her biblical obligation, and therefore a man maybe would not be able to fulfill Kiddush for his wife, and that is one of the questions that in the commentaries of Shulchan Aruch is asked, and there is other opinions that say it's absolutely no problem. And what it boiled down to a question of what the idea of arvus, being an arev, is that applied to women or not? The responsibility that men have for each other, we all have responsibility. Your obligation is connected to my obligation. And we mentioned that there is a discussion in the commentaries if that applies, if that same obligation applies to women. Are they responsible for each other? Do they have that same obligation? Of course, we know children wouldn't have the obligation of arvus. Kids are not included in arvus, but would adults be, would women be included in that? And it's interesting because there is a connection to this week's Parsha. According to, there is a Hasidic insight in the Parsha where it talks about the menorah being banged out, and the banging out of the menorah was made from one piece of gold, and they had to bang it in order to shape it properly. They didn't just attach different pieces, but they banged it out. So just to connect a little Hasidic insight with the Gemara that we're learning, there is a insight that's mentioned that what happens when you bang out, let me mute everyone. I think there's background noise here. Okay, what happens when you bang out a certain shape? So you cause the metal that's below to go up and the metal that's above to come down. You move around the metal that's all in one place. So it's brought down that the idea of arvus, the idea of all the Yidden are the achdus, the oneness of the Yidden, which is the idea of arvus. That achdus is connected to the menorah. That if there's different ways of understanding how we're all considered one. On a very simple level, we're all considered one because we each complement each other. Just like the head needs the feet to go somewhere, the head can't walk, so it needs feet in order to get somewhere. So the same thing applies to every Yid, that you might be much smarter than me, but I have a different niche that can complement you. And this third person has another talent that he can complement me. And every Yid has something that we complement each other, and that's how we're all considered with achdus, unity. But there is a deeper level of achdus, of unity, and that is that whatever you do is basically caused because of me. So if you act bad, instead of me looking down at you, I should look at myself and say, I'm the cause of you doing something wrong. Because when you bang out metal, you cause the bottom metal to be pushed to the top, and the top metal pushed to the bottom. So the idea is that every Yid, you're causing whatever you see somewhere else could be your cause. You're causing that. And the fact that you have such great mitzvahs that you've been doing, it could be because someone else is pushing his metal into you, and it's making it easier for you to fulfill your mitzvahs. So we're all one because every action of ours has an effect on everyone else, and that's the idea of the menorah being considered. Klal Yisrael is called Knesset Yisrael. Is the menorah is considered a symbolic of the Jewish people, and the banging out of the menorah is the idea that it could be the reason why you have mitzvahs. You're able to do certain mitzvahs that other people aren't, is because of them, and the reason why someone else is sinning could be because of you. And so it's all about this idea of being banged out, and we're all responsible for each other. the arevos that we're talking about in our Gemara. So just to connect it a little to a little Hasidic insight, beautiful little insight. So that's what we've been talking about, this mitzvah, the idea of arvus. Now, we did have some topics that came up. One of them was the question that Tosfos brings on Rashi, and that was about the Levium. I think Ezra had this question about the Levium. What about their land? Do they really own it? And it seems that there is discussion in the Mishnayos. It could be translated to mean the argument in the Mishnah could be if the Levium really own their land or not. But the final conclusion is that they do, and at least in halacha, the way the Ramban brings it, and he says that there's two proofs really that the Levium are considered owners of their land. Number one is that they can charge rent. They do charge rent when someone comes to live in their property in their area. So they do have the right to charge rent when someone comes, because if they murdered someone by mistake, they have to run to a city of the Levites. It's called cities of refuge, and all the Levite cities are cities of refuge. There's 6 official cities of refuge, and then there's 42 cities of the Levites that are also usable as cities of refuge. And it says that the Levium are able to charge rent in those 42 cities. So that shows that they're not just given a right to dwell in their land, but they actually own their land. Now, the other point is a Mishnah in Meiser Sheni, and that Mishnah says that the Levium and Kayanim, they are able to recite. It's an argument in the Mishnah, but the concluding opinion, the halacha opinion, the final verdict, the way we paskin is that the Levium and Kayanim, they're able to recite the vidui meiser, the end of the 3rd year, which I shouldn't say that. Really it's the 4th year. In the 4th year, after the 3rd year produce is being tithed, so it's in the 4th year, Pesach time, and the same thing would be in the 7th year, Pesach time. They have to make a statement that they have submitted all their meiser and truma, all their tithings have been submitted. So it's called the vidui meiser. It's called the confession of meiser, and that's done on the 4th year. After 3 full years, they do it on the 4th year, and the same thing is after the 4th, 5th, and 6th year, they do it on the 7th year. So it's on the 4th year and the 7th year. At Pesach time, they do what's called vidui meiser. And the problem is, one of the statements that they say is the land. They thank Hashem for for the land that Hashem gave them. The problem is, can a Levite say that? And can a Levi say, for the land that you gave me? And the Rabbi Yossi holds that he can, and this is the source of the answer that we have for Tosfos, that we said that it's based on a Magen Avram. The Alter Rebbe brought it in Shulchan Aruch, and in the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Alter Rebbe brought it, that this is based on this Mishnah, I think, because the Mishnah says here, Yesh lahem are migrash, the Levites do have cities that they are considered their inheritance, that they, so to speak, are given, that they can plant in, they can use. So what we see here is that causes them to be considered that they have some type of an inheritance. They have some type of a land that, when we say the land that Hashem gave us, that is somehow included. The fact that they have this land is called Arei Migrash, the outside land outside of their actual cities. that causes them to be considered that they have an inheritance. Now, I did mention yesterday that the migrash, the way the common translation of migrash is the land that's not planted even, it's the empty land. There's two parts of land, there's two parts of the land outside of the Levite property. The Levites were given property that they dwelled in, and then outside of that property, there were either 2,000 cubits or 3,000 cubits. That it's a difference of opinion between Rashi and the Ramban, either 2,000 cubits or 3,000 cubits. 1,000 around their land, around their city, was empty land, and then the next either 1,000 or 2,000 was used for sados uchramim, fields and vineyards. And so, because of those, that area, it says that 1,000 was migrash, and the other outside area, either 1,000 or 2,000, was sados uchramim, was fields and vineyards. Now, if you look in the pasuk, it actually uses the term migrashei ha'arim for the entire part is called migrash. So, my understanding, well, let's take a look here. The verse says, the migrashei ha'arim, the open spaces or the unliving space of the land that you give to the Levium is 1,000 cubits, and then you calculate 2,000 cubits. This will be the migrashei ha'arim. Again, it uses the term migrashei. So what that means is that migrash refers to both the open land and the land that's planted. And my understanding is that because they're able to plant and have vineyards, that's what we're calling their land. And that's why in benching, we were talking about benching. We said women have a question if they're obligated biblically in saying grace after meals because the land wasn't divided to women. But what about the Kohanim and Levium, the Levites? Were they given land? Were they divided land, which my understanding is to plan to be able to eat from? And so here, this would seem to be the meaning that they have migrash, which means they have lands, which I'm understanding to mean the fields and the vineyards, which is fruit that they could, fruit and grain and other plants that they could eat from, which is connected to their grace after meal, which would also be connected to the vidui meiser, to the fact that they're bringing produce and saying the confession about tithing. So that is my understanding. And the Alter Rebbe clearly spells out, he says, if they would not have these extra lands, they would not be able to recite. That would not be a biblical obligation, or it wouldn't be a definite biblical obligation for them to recite grace after meals, even though they have land that they live on, but they don't have land that they plant. So it seems that that's the meaning, that this migrash is land that they plant, and that's why, again, I didn't see it. No one seems to talk about this, so I don't have any commentaries to rely on. I am sharing with you my thoughts that this is what it's referring to. Even, I must say, even the Mishnayos, I didn't really see much commentaries on the Mishnayos, so this is my understanding that it's based on that. And what else? I do have a Ramban here, and the Ramban that I was going to mention, let me just see if I can find it now at the end of Chirach. There is a Ramban here that says that the problem is that there's a verse. The verse says, to the children of Levi, it says, verse 20, in the land they should not inherit. So it sounds like they're not getting an inherit. There's a verse. The verse says they shouldn't inherit. Rashi doesn't say anything on that part. It's verse 20 at the end of Korach, the Ramban says they don't inherit, that they will like the other Shvatim, like the other tribes. And he says, because their lands are meant for the Israelites to be able to run to. So in other words, they're not inheriting their land because the Israelites are able to really use it for land for them to live, to as cities of refuge. And so that's why it's not called an inheritance. So what it sounds like is that the land that they're able to plant on, that is good for them. Just a thought. In other words, this land that they're living in, this is meant for the Israelites to use as cities for them to dwell in. For unintentional murderers that they have to go to exile, so they have to go there. So that's why it's called Ba'artzam Leisimcha. They're not fully inheriting it. So my thought is that because they do have land that they can use that's not meant for dwelling, so maybe that's why it's called. This is really more theirs. So in other words, this would be another thought of why it's theirs, not necessarily connected to the planting, but connected to the fact that it's not land meant to dwell on. People are not supposed to dwell there. You're not allowed to make a city, migrash a city. You're not allowed to make the open cities into dwelling places. So in other words, the Israelites are able to go there to your city, but that land that's the open cities and for planting, that's specifically for the Levites. So they do have some type of inheritance, not necessarily because of the planting, but because it's not used by the Israelites. Just a thought. Yes, Isaac.
Now you see what zoning lawyers go through when they argue whether or not this property can have a shul or a thing. This is like really a zoning law. You're looking for the statute, and there's not enough text in there to work it out. But these are the issues that you deal with. Is this place zoned for residential? No, this is only for agricultural use. And this is only for open space. And that's
right.
Just, I happen to be listening to this, and it's bringing me back. That's all.
The interesting thing is that this is regarding the Levite cities. And the code, so no, but the question is, what about other cities? Do they have these codes? And the answer is, at least from my understanding, no. I have to look it up again. But there's a statement in the Talmud that's repeated a few times about you can't make a ear migrash and a migrash ear, but I think it says only regarding the Levites. So that would mean that the other cities have less code issues.
But you're dealing with the large code, which is Eretz Yisrael. Then you have probably each shevet, in terms of the land that it controlled, may have had rules, customs, or regulations. Mm-hmm. And then you had each city.
Right. Okay. Well, this is from
regulations.
Right. I'm saying from the biblical standpoint, but you're right. Each city might have their own, right. They could create their own rules. But yeah, this is the source of code compliance based in the Gemara, in the Chumash. Thank you, Isaac, for bringing that up.
If you had a city with a wall around it, you had rules. You can't, scribble on it. You can't do graffiti. You can't hang signs. Right. I'm sure.
Very interesting. Thank you, Isaac, for bringing that up. Yes, Ben. Ben?
This is Ruvain.
I wanted to say that migrash is a plot. Migrash means a plot, and domain means a shetach. So the domain would be probably the housing. The migrash would be the plot for planting.
Well, migrash also means open, that you're not allowed to plant. There is areas in the migrash that in other words, the first 1,000 amos, they call it migrash, that you can't plant. And the other
then you would say it's an empty
lot.
migrash.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever. The Chumash doesn't say that. But
Empty
yeah.
plot, but you know,
Right.
a plot is for planting. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Fine. Okay. Raymond.
Could you use that field area for economic activity other than agricultural? In other words, let's say today, could you put an airport on it or a manufacturing factory?
Mm-hmm. You know what? I don't know. We'd have to look through the. I see the Rambam talks about in the laws of Shemitah and Yovel. He talks about it a little about these cities. That in the cities of the Levites, you can't. The city itself should not be transformed into an outlying residential area, and the outlying residential area should not be made part of the city. So you might be able to. See some type of a way of applying some of these laws. It would be in the 13th chapter of Shemitah and Yovel. So if you want to look up there and see if you can apply any of these laws, they do have an English Rambam. So if someone wants to look into that, you probably might be able to see more details about these laws. But we are only bringing it up because we saw the answer to Tosfos' question of if the Kohanim and the Levites would be obligated definitely in grace after meal. And there is a commentary, the Shiltei Giborim, who mentions that the Kohanim and Levites are in the same category as women, that because of this question, they would also be a question if their obligation of benching of grace after meals is biblical. Everyone else argues, everyone else finds these answers to the question, but there is a commentary that takes it more serious and says this is a question for the Kohanim and Levites as well, if they're considered biblically obligated in grace after meal. Okay, so now we did the next Gemara as well, and the next Gemara mentioned the Brochos Kohanim. And in the Brochos Kohanim, in the blessings of the Kohen, the priestly blessings, we mentioned that there seems to be a contradiction to one of the laws in the Torah. There's a statement in the Torah that says Hashem doesn't take favorites. He doesn't show favoritism. And here it says, Yisa Hashem panav elecha. Hashem will show favoritism to you. So the Gemara answered that he shows favoritism to thee. How could he not? We even say grace after meals by just eating even an olive size or an egg size. Hashem's not going to show us favoritism. So the question I asked was, this is a rabbinic obligation to recite grace after meals. So why does the Gemara find this to be such a special, rabbinic obligation that the Jewish people do, that it finds it a good reason why Hashem will show favoritism to the Jewish people? There's numerous rabbinic laws. Every other law is rabbinic that we have. I mean, there are 613 biblical commandments, but there's so many rabbinic mitzvahs that and different laws, a part of the rabbinic laws that are really attached to the Torah that we fulfill. So why is the Gemara so impressed with this specific mitzvah? That was the question we used.
Because it says ve'achalta v'savata uvarachta et Hashem Elokecha.
Okay, so it does say in the Torah that you're obligated to say grace after meals by being satisfied, and the rabbis said that you have to say grace after meals not. I don't know how that's different than the rabbis telling you to say Hallel on Rosh Chodesh, or the rabbis telling you to say Hallel on Yom Tov. These are rabbinic obligations that the rabbis added. Why isn't that a reason why Hashem should show grace to the Jewish people. So Reuven yesterday had an answer. Reuven, do you want to tell us something about gratitude?
I would think that
One second, Isaac. Reuven said something. You're muted, Reuven. Do you want to tell us what you wanted? You wanted to tell us yesterday an answer.
Yes, I think that it has such weight because it shows gratitude, and this attitude of gratitude is not small; it's huge. You have an appreciation for everything that Hashem does, and if you look through the list that we go through of the things we're thanking Hashem for, we're acknowledging that He's choosing us as the recipients for these brachos.
Okay, you could question that with the fact that there's others as well that are gratitude, Hallel, and the whole davening is full of rabbinic blessings. And
but you hear people say, "Oh, I don't want to wash because then I have to bench," which seems to me counterproductive. I want to wash, so I get to bench. I mean, I was at a Farbrengen last night, and there was an opportunity to wash, so I took the opportunity for sure. I definitely want to wash, so that we could bench 100%.
But there it could be you ate enough to satisfaction.
It was a lot of food there.
So, but here we're talking that you're benching even after just the kazayas. But yeah, okay. Anyway, it's a good point. Gratitude, it's a good point. I'm not sure if it answers the question fully because we do have other examples of gratitude, but it definitely is an important factor. So thank you, Reuven. Any other thoughts, Ben? Isaac had something. Yeah, Isaac, you're muted.
No. Let Ben go first, please.
Ben.
Well, I think you covered it, but it's the gratitude point is that the rabbinic is only saying that you need as kezayit. Hashem said v'savata. So if you bless even on a little thing, God says, boy, they are really showing gratitude. And appreciates it, and that's why he shows us faith.
Okay, Isaac? No, you're muted.
Sorry. I think we're all getting around, but not saying the key thing. It's not talking about Hallel. How many times do you eat a day? You walk by something, you see something that looks good. Watch a guy. He walks by an apple stand, grabs an apple, sticks it in his mouth, sees a cookie, and he picks it up. Whatever they're doing, they're just stuffing things into their mouth, and it's a common thing. And we feel that way also when we're hungry. To then stop, it's not a question of benching. I don't have the time. I don't want to be bothered, because it interferes with our day-to-day 50 times a day. How many brachos are you supposed to make a day? Mea brachos. So we're supposed to make 100 brachos a day. Tell a guy he has to say, thank God, 100 times a day when he puts something in his mouth, when he lets something go, before, after, during. He looks at you like you're crazy. So the fact that when you have to do it only when you have a certain shear, and we're willing to take it on for even less than the shear, in a very common basic thing that human beings all do 50 times a day, is a big deal with Hashem. That's all. Right. My father always said, he learned early on that you have to make mea brachos a day. He didn't know until he was much older that you could be yotzei with Ashi Yotzar.
So what basically, I guess what the question that you could ask is, we say many blessings before food and after food that aren't meals, that also would be part of this idea. And the Gemara why does the Gemara only mention the grace after meals for rabbinic, which is rabbinic law? It seems that maybe because it's such a long benching, maybe because it's so long, maybe I'm guessing that would be your answer. I did see in a sefer I saw it brought from Rebbe Eliyahu Gutmacher, who was a big Rav in Europe, and he asked this question, and he explains that why would a person bench? Why would a person say grace after meals after only eating an olive size? Must be that we're talking about a person who's suffering from poverty, only has an olive sized bread. And he says, normally when a person is struggling and suffering like that, he would be angry. I only have an olive size of bread. Why do I have to suffer? Why is life, why should I have to, why is Hashem doing this? Why is life treating me so bad? Why is Hashem making me struggle so hard? And so instead, he goes and he recites the grace after meal. And he recites the whole grace after meals, which is a great way of thanking Hashem. So that is really a reason why Hashem will show favoritism. So in other words, the person has a reason to complain. Now, what this means to us, I think, if you want to take that explanation, what I think that says is that when we say the grace after meals, it's not enough just to say the grace after meals, but you have to really think of how thankful we are, even if you have anything that you're struggling, whenever you thank Hashem, but you thank him even though there are issues that are complicated, and yet you're still thanking Hashem. That would be included in this idea of causing Hashem to give us show favoritism to us. So if you want Hashem to show favoritism to you, according to this explanation, it's all about thanking Hashem even at times when things are hard and when there are challenges. It would seem like that would be part of this. Now, the only other thing that I will mention is we did have that Taisvis a while back that said a child, a katan, could fulfill the obligation for an adult for grace after meals, but he can't fulfill the obligation for an adult for Megillah. And one of the answers that Taisvis gave was because a child, since the rabbis were so strict on him for the grace after, since the rabbis were so strict for grace after meals, they were lenient to let a kid say it for the parent, for the adult. A kid could do it. So what you see in Taisvis is that this is a very big stringency. So I'm sharing with you a second thought, and that is, and the first one was about the fact that it's a struggle, and yet you're still, and someone's struggling financially. The second thought is that somehow benching is considered a very overly stringent matter. The Taisvis uses the term chumra yasera, an overly extra. The rabbis went overboard with this, so they said, you know what? We'll let a kid can even fulfill the obligation. Why is it considered? We see that they seem to say that this grace after meals is like the rabbis took it very far. And maybe that's what the Gemara means here, that the rabbis took it very far and we accept it. Why is it so far? I guess because people, as Ruvain mentioned, that people don't like to wash. They're going to have to bench. It's like it's somehow the grace after meal. It's in the common way people think that, the people don't want to give a few minutes away, give up those few minutes. They don't want to have to bench. So with regard to that, the rabbi said, no, you have to bench even for a kazaya. That's going very far, because those few minutes, it's not just saying a little, the 10-second blessing. This is a moment of, this is a chunk of time that it takes to bench. So somehow it's considered a chumra yasera, tremendous amount of extra chumra. So maybe that's why it's considered that the Gemara chooses this. We see that it's somehow accepted as considered a chumra yasera more than other. Now, for example, what about the holiday of Purim? It's all rabbinic, but that holiday is not so hard for people to keep. So you have a day, you get a day of celebration. It's a whole day, but it's a day of celebration. It's not surprising that people are going to keep it. Here, it's on a daily basis to take that, to lose those few minutes, and to have to bench. It somehow carries with it a chumra yasera. It's called an extra chumra. Anyway, those are the two thoughts that I've found. And I think Moshe, you wanted to say something?
Is there a chumra yasera for berachot, for the berachot that we say for before we eat something?
Doesn't say that. I didn't see that. I didn't see it mentioned that that's called a chumra yasera. But I saw Taisus says this is called a chumra yasera with regard to grace after meal. Yes, David.
I think it's ironic that the Kohanim are in this group of where there's a question regarding benching, and then at the same time, who do we pick to lead the grace after meals? Is the Kohen, who is in this questionable situation of fulfilling the mitzvah or not.
Right, but at the same time, the conclusion is that a Kohen is definitely obligated. That's the halacha is a Kohen is definitely obligated, but the question is why. But the conclusion is they're definitely obligated, even though women are not. And the second thing is that Kohanim, we do have an obligation to honor them. So even if they're only obligated by question, but they have to bench because of the suffix, because they have to be machmir, we still have to honor them to do the grace after meal. To bench. But I guess your question is a very good question, because it used to be that the person who said the grace after meals was the one who had in mind everyone else. So according to that, it would be problematic, because the code, used to be the one who said the grace after meals sort of was mitzi, was fulfilling the obligation for everyone. Everyone else just said amen. So your question is a good question, in theory, but of course the final conclusion is the Kohanim are definitely obligated. But the thought in the thought process, it would have been an interesting thing, because they used to have everyone in mind. Nowadays we all say our own grace after meal. Okay, Ezra.
A couple of things. First of all, the city of Nov, which is a city of all Kohanim, so therefore they, by definition, had a place there. So you could say that based on that, they should be able to, to be motzi everybody else, because they had a place in which is defined as a city, and a city has a migrash around it, etc. That's number one. Number two, I
don't know if I agree with that. No one says it. None of the commentaries say it. Just because it was a city that Kohanim dwelled in, why does that make it a better city of Kohanim, better than any other city that Kohanim dwelled in or Levites dwelled in?
No, what I'm saying is that here we give you an example of a city that we know for sure Kohanim has a definite Kohanic presence there, and so therefore, just like all the other cities that Kohanim lived, would also have a migrash and all the other accoutrements that go with it. That's the first thing. The second thing
I don't agree with that, but okay, I'll let you continue.
The second thing is that when Tosfot explains why the idea about women and everything else, he brings two other things that we also say during the Birkat Hamazon, and that is he says v'yesh lomar detama mishum dichtiv al beitcha shehatamta bibsarenu v'atoratcha shelimatanu. So that those are things that Kohanim for sure are responsible for, and that would be reason enough for them to be mechuyav in Birkat Kohanim. In Birkat Hamazon.
Yeah, we mentioned that yesterday, that Tosfos' explanation. But okay, the question is that even according to Tosfos' explanation of the logic of the Gemara, he still really needs to answer his initial question of the land, because it does seem part of, it's still an issue sort of, even though he has another way of explaining the Gemara, but how does he feel that that's not an issue? Just because he has a question, what are you going to do about the Kohanim? He still has to find, have a understanding of why is it not an issue? So, just throwing that as well. But yeah, we did mention Tosfos' explanation yesterday about the bris and Torah. Okay, any other thoughts?
Yeah.